Hey, good afternoon to you. It is 5:06 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up this hour, John Daniel Davidson joins us from the Federalist. We have a lot to talk about with him, including Nikki Haley's doomed campaign in New Hampshire. Not to spoil it or anything. You can join us, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Well, that 2020 election was a big old disaster for any number of reasons, including the fact that our government decided to impose unconstitutional and ridiculous voting rules throughout. For more on this, I want to bring in a guest from America First Legal. He's the counsel for America First Legal. And their organization has just sued the Department of Homeland Security over the mass mail-in voting back in 2020. Michael Ding joins us now. Michael, good to have you with us, sir.
Good to be here. Thank you.
Give us a sense of what your lawsuit's all about.
Well, we sued the Department of Homeland Security and the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency after we submitted a FOIA request to them.
Yes.
Didn't respond, and we're trying to get these records under, court order. And, as you have seen lately with these documents that we are releasing, that we received from them in litigation, the full extent of their censorship activities leading up to the 2020 election just continues to look worse and worse.
Now, the documents reveal some fascinating information about the necessity of all of this mail-in voting. What have you found?
Well, yeah, that was definitely interesting about the in-person voting, right? Like during COVID, there was a lot of noise about the dangers of, the spread of infections and COVID, and there are studies saying that in-person voting might be risky. But by September, folks at this agency in Homeland Security, or CISA, they were aware of the studies that said that, there is no evidence that in-person voting would increase the spread of COVID. But even so, they continue to push and support this mail-in voting change that was being implemented across all these different states.
As far as mail-in ballots go, what was the government's opinion of how safe they were, or secure they were?
Well, CISA, they identified a whole bunch of different, so-called cybersecurity and infrastructure risks,
right,
associated with that, right? You're talking about part of it is just even due to the fact that some of these changes were implemented last minute. And so local elections officials would have to, implement the security side to how to secure these new risks that are created from mail-in voting on a compressed timeline. So that by itself was a new risk. But of course, we're also talking about everything from chain of custody with the postal system, the mail processing facilities, and just other integrity attack vectors, whether it goes to voter registration data or other systems that, just complicates the entire risk environment when compared to in-person voting.
So in the documents I see today, again, obtained by America First Legal and released, CISA knew that mail-in and absentee voting are way less secure than in-person voting. And they confirmed the warnings that President Trump had given at the time that there would be fraud concerns. And CISA shared these concerns apparently with mainstream media outlets during an unclassified meeting the Friday before the 2020 election. However, the mainstream media refused to share that with the public?
Oh, that was the craziest thing about this, right? In terms of what happened in 2020, if that isn't proof that the agencies in the deep state were very much, working hand in glove with the mainstream media outlets, that was the best part, right? You have CISA here doing this tour with the media to share these documents that we have posted online about the risks with mail-in ballots and mail-in voting. Yet the narrative that the Washington Post came up with was all about promoting CISA Director Chris Krebs as someone who is, willing to stand up to Trump, willing to contradict Trump, and being an independent from Trump. Yet, as it turns out, you know, Trump's concerns and Attorney General Barr's concern about mail-in voting was recognized by CISA. But that's not the story that the Washington Post wanted to promote.
Not at all. Not at all. In fact, we were told all of a sudden that mail-in voting was practically a sacrament. It was going to be is one of the best things you could do in your entire life. Another bullet point here from some of your findings. CISA relied upon a consulting firm called Deloitte, people are probably likely familiar with, an accounting and consulting firm, to gather disinformation narratives regarding vote by mail across social media for the purpose of monitoring and censorship. What can you tell us about that?
I think the Deloitte angle just shows the extent to which this, it's not a very large federal agency, but the extent they went to, in my opinion, go beyond the scope of their specific authorities and mission, which is protecting cybersecurity and infrastructure, to this widespread internet surveillance where they have to contract with large, big four accounting firms just to track and analyze social media trends all across the internet, whether it's specific themes such as COVID-19 or risks about vote by mail. The fact that they could outsource this just further confirms how much beyond their core mission set this goes to.
Well, they shouldn't insource it either. I mean, the point of the agency is cybersecurity and infrastructure. Why would they be in the speech policing business?
Right. And in one of the lawsuits that America First Legal is also involved in, where we are suing on behalf of, the Gateway Pundit founder, as well as Jill Hines, we're suing the so-called researchers in the Election Integrity Partnership that CISA also outsourced the censorship activity to. And, in our press release, we talk and reference the report recently issued by the House Judiciary Committee and their investigation, showing that CISA, more or less, one, they knew they were a government entity, so they can't infringe on First Amendment rights. Two, they don't have the resources to scour the internet and flag specific social media posts. So they outsourced that to a bunch of researchers from Stanford, University of Washington, the Atlantic Council, and others, just to do their dirty work for them. And so Deloitte is just another piece of that, showing just how far they went to outsource this activity that, I'm pretty sure they knew was unconstitutional to begin with.
So the critical question, looking back on all of this, is what does it bode for this year's election? What do we expect this year? And is there an improved picture?
Well, one thing that I think many folks in this First Amendment space is eager to see is the Missouri versus Biden case, which is up before the Supreme Court.
Right.
Now under the title of Murphy. And we will see whether the Supreme Court lets the injunction go back in place. So in the Missouri versus Biden case, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals issued a injunction preventing CISA from doing this exact thing. But right now, I think it's stayed, and so we're all eager to see what the Supreme Court is going to decide.
Okay. All right. Well, I am too, and I hope they side with free speech. I'm concerned about the Supreme Court, but I really do hope they side with free speech going into this election. Thank you very much, Michael Ding with America First Legal. Nice to talk to you today, sir.
Thank you, Vince.
All right. Keeping an eye on Joe Biden in Manassas today. Apparently, I'm seeing a tweet here that, it looks like the Secret Service is just attending to him. RNC has put out a tweet saying the Secret Service has swarmed Biden as he wraps up his remarks, which were interrupted by pro-Hamas protesters at least 13 times. They have pro-terrorist protesters at these events. It's amazing. As Biden is advocating for more death here in the United States, you can see the point of the event today was to support aborting more babies. And it's just... And there was another pro-death group that was upset he wasn't talking about their version. Anyway, that was happening today, and the Secret Service, they do move to Biden, but the reason for that appears to be that Biden began working a rope line behind his lectern, and it looks like Secret Service agents moved in to begin monitoring the handshakes as they do. You see this happen all the time with presidents and presidential candidates, Secret Service agent watching everybody like a hawk to see how they interact with the candidate or the office holder. So we'll keep you updated on things there. As far as New Hampshire is concerned, my understanding is that Biden was speaking pretty openly today about Trump being the nominee. Biden has been told, apparently, that Trump's got this thing wrapped up. Somebody finally let him know. And it is amazing to see here. There's a couple things to bring to your attention. One of them is that there is a Democrat primary today going on in New Hampshire. Now, the DNC does not really want you to know that. They do not want to emphasize this at all. In fact, they tried to change the whole calendar to make it so that it was just South Carolina that went first for racial reasons. I'm not kidding. That's actually why they changed the composition of their primary process. They said they assessed the skin color of the residents of South Carolina and said they would be preferable. So they decided to go first with South Carolina. The goal is to make it so that Biden has smooth sailing, apparently, for the reelect, at least for getting the nomination again. But a congressman by the name of Dean Phillips is running for real in New Hampshire. His name's actually on the ballot, whereas Joe Biden's name is not. They didn't put his name on the ballot because they didn't want to dignify it. So there's a write-in campaign today for Biden. It's what a dumpster fire. They can't even handle ballots. Well, they handle a lot of ballots, but they can't handle getting Joe Biden's name on one. And here's the thing. Dean Phillips is saying it is a crisis situation for Democrats because nobody likes Biden, and he is detecting that a whole lot of people like Trump. Listen to Dean Phillips talking to CNN this week.
And I'll tell you something. Last night, I saw a Trump rally outside of mine. I walked up to the line of people a mile long, and I simply said hello. I was met with 50 people going to the Trump rally who were friendly, hospitable, thoughtful. Some who said they voted for Barack Obama. Some said they were Bernie Sanders supporters, about half of whom had never been to a Trump event before. So to everybody watching right now, Donald Trump is on a big mission to win, and Joe Biden is going to get creamed. And I just wish Democrats would wake up and ensure that at least we give it our best shot, because right now I'm afraid we are deluded into a nightmare.
Joe Biden is going to be creamed. Donald Trump is on the path to re-election here. Dean Phillips also talking to reporters in a separate exchange in the last 24 hours, telling them that they're not even asking questions that people give a bleep about.
I've said this 18,000 times. I'm only doing this to defeat Donald Trump. Nobody seems to want to do that in the Democratic Party right now, other than me, because Joe Biden can't, is my proposition, because the data says he can't. No one in the country right now cares. In fact, most of the people in the country are going to the Trump rally right now because he's listening to them. No one's asking about this stuff. I'm just frustrated. I hope you understand why I'm getting tired of it. You're doing your jobs, but you're not asking the questions that Americans give a shit about.
He's at his wit's end. He's like, I want to defeat Trump. Trump's going to win this thing. I'm walking all over New Hampshire. Everybody likes Trump. Do you understand? Do you understand? One New Hampshire voter told CNN that she voted for Nikki Haley today. She prefers her.
I voted for Nikki Haley because I was voting against Donald Trump.
And what propelled you to get to this point?
I'm 74 years old. I've lived in a constitutional democracy all my life.
Basically a constitutional republic.
I want to remain that way, and I want my grandchildren to grow up in one.
And
not a dictatorship.
Not a dictatorship. I got news for you, honey. There's a guy right now who's making it like that, very much so. Tyranny, out of control. Also on CNN, they ran into a quote-unquote voter who said that she wrote in Joe Biden today in the Democrat primary, and she didn't like Dean Phillips. CNN did not reveal the background of this woman. I will in just a moment.
New Hampshire Democrats' primary is a little confusing. The DNC made South Carolina the first official contest, making Tuesday's results somewhat meaningless on the Democratic side. President Biden's name's not even on the ballot. He didn't campaign in the state.
Well, I'm kind of angry about it. And some people have said, why should we write his name in when he won't even give us the time of day?
Why should we even write his name in? That's a Democrat. Biden and company are just ticking off Democrats, too. They're awful at this. It shows you why they have so much contempt for democracy. They'd like to exclude the voters at all costs. They're not trying to impress them. Fox News apparently has exit polls right now of the New Hampshire voters coming out of the polls. 10% of the Democrats voting in the primary today said they won't vote for for the Democrat if Biden's the nominee. It's just like, amazing. CNN this morning spoke to a voter who did vote for Biden. They just described her as an anonymous voter who wrote Joe Biden's name in. More on who she actually is in a second.
Not on the ballot, but supporters can write it in. Here's one Democratic voter who did just that.
Wrote in Joe Biden.
Yeah?
Yes.
Yeah. Were you disappointed that his name actually wasn't on the ballot, or was that a secondary issue to you?
Disappointed, but very happy to vote for him by writing his name in.
Yeah. Obviously, Dean Phillips hit this state very, very hard, trying to, really take advantage of the fact that Joe Biden was not on the ballot. Did any of that campaigning get through to you, matter to you, or were you unwavering the whole time?
I was unwavering, and I actually found him annoying.
I actually found him annoying, she says. What CNN doesn't tell you here, and I see some people saying online that CNN just didn't know. They were just ignorant of the fact. But I don't know. And she didn't admit it either. That is the former head of the Democrat Party in New Hampshire. That's not just some random voter. It's a dyed-in-the-wool party operative, one of the leaders of the state's Democrat Party, talking to CNN like she was just some rando. Yeah, I wrote Joe Biden's name in. Dean Phillips is annoying. Wait. A random New Hampshire voter stopped by CNN to talk to us. It's all a big lie. It's like these, when you have those town halls and you're like, oh, random voter has a question. Then you find out it's actually a party operative. That just keeps happening. Maybe it's not a mistake. Maybe not. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt today. I'm a nice guy. Coming up, John Daniel Davidson is here from the Federalist. We'll talk about what's next for Nikki Haley's campaign. We're all waiting to see. Good afternoon to you. 534 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. You can join us today, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. As I was saying moments ago, Joe Biden, a short while ago, was speaking in Manassas, Virginia, at a death cult rally. They were all getting together. They want to abort more American children. Our birth rates are plummeting. You know what we need more of? Abortion. They're really campaigning on this. While Biden was there, he delivered what is sure to be a new favorite among our audio clips. Here's the president of the United States today mumbling nonsense. Take a listen to this. Here we go.
We'll teach Donald Trump a valuable lesson. Don't mess with the women in America unless you want to get the benefit.
Yeah, remember, don't mess with the woman unless you want to get the benefit. All right? You mess with the woman, you get the horns. And, of course, that clip can't be played without this famous one.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to put him...
Obviously. Meanwhile, the race to replace Joe Biden is going on today in New Hampshire. The New Hampshire primary is occurring. Donald Trump set to win it handily. Nikki Haley staying in the race for some reason, though. And for more on that, I want to bring in John Daniel Davidson. He is a senior editor at the Federalist, and he can string together English sentences. John, great to have you with us, sir.
Thanks for having me.
Really nice to talk to you. All right, so Nikki Haley is a fascinating person. She's in this primary. Ron DeSantis got out over the weekend, said, look, I don't see a path forward. Is there a path forward for Nikki Haley?
Oh, no, absolutely not. Her support is entirely manufactured. Her real constituency are moneyed interests in Washington, D.C., mostly in the defense industry. But no, she doesn't have any real base of support, especially among the GOP primary electorate. And I think we're going to see whatever numbers she has tonight in New Hampshire are going to be partly due to Democrats and independents crossing over and voting in an open GOP primary.
And we have seen some evidence that that's actually what's happening, right?
Yeah, that's right. There's been this was reporting that goes back to October when that was the deadline for New Hampshire residents to either change party affiliation or just drop party affiliation, which of course in New Hampshire, if you have no party affiliation or you switch party affiliation, you can vote whatever primary you want to. So the largest voting bloc in New Hampshire are actually unaffiliated or independent voters who are free to vote in the GOP primary or the Democrat primary, whatever they want. And so we're going to see a lot of those people, of course, voting for Nikki Haley tonight.
Yeah, it's interesting. I heard Donald Trump over the weekend indicated that he is not inclined to make her his running mate. There was some chatter that he might do that, but he said that she doesn't have presidential timber, and as a result, it's very unlikely that he would pick her as vice president.
Oh, yeah. I think it would be a huge mistake. For one thing, I think it would be very dispiriting to his base of support, which, of course, is completely out of step with the things that Nikki Haley actually says. If you listen to her, she doesn't sound anything like what the Republican base likes or wants out of a presidential or vice presidential candidate. She's way out of step with the rank and file members of the party and represents really the GOP that Trump destroyed in 2016, which is sort of like the GOP of John McCain or Mitch McConnell.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was listening to my friend and colleague Mark Levin last night. He described her position on life as quote incoherent, which I agree with. She stood up on that debate stage and she claimed she was pro-life and simultaneously made a vigorous defense of abortion on stage. Right. She kind of seems to want everything both ways.
Oh, yeah, it's the same on almost every issue, especially the really sort of hot button issues like that require moral clarity. You get none of that from Nikki Haley, whether it's abortion or whatever the issue. You're not going to get a straight answer from Nikki Haley, and that's because I don't think she really believes anything. She has no moral center, and I think she'll pretty much say whatever her financial backers tell her to say.
Over the weekend, or just in the last few days, she was talking to NBC News, and she sat down for an interview with two women. I'm not quite sure who these women are, but they've done a couple of these interviews with these presidential candidates. They look really unhappy when they're doing the interviews for some reason. But as they're doing it with Nikki Haley, Nikki tried to appeal to them by saying that growing up, she was the victim of constant racism. Take a listen to this.
We were the only Indian family in our small southern town. I was teased every day for being brown. So anyone that wants to question it can go back and look at what I've said on how hard it was to grow up in the deep South as a brown girl.
Now, we can also look at photos of her. She doesn't look brown at all. I don't even know what she's really exactly talking about. What is this?
This is Nikki Haley doing what she has done time and time again, where she accepts the premise of the left when she's dealing with the media. Any media questions that are framed around a leftist narrative of identity politics or sort of, race essentialism, she just accepts the frame. She doesn't challenge the priors that are embedded in the question and then tries to appeal to them by flattering their prior assumptions. It's crazy, too, that as the twice elected governor of a southern state, she would go onto a mainstream media, interview and trash the people and the community from which she comes.
Right.
People who have put her in office. She's not appealing to Republican voters when she does this. She's appealing to tastemakers in the corporate press and corporate donors. That's who she's appealing to because that's her real constituency.
Well, in a sense, it makes you think that if she's not chasing voters, which she clearly isn't, she's chasing another highly paid job somewhere in politically correct corporate America.
Yeah, and she's proven very adept at that. We all know her history with Boeing after being, sort of arranging some sweetheart deals as governor of South Carolina for Boeing and then going to sit on the board.
How's Boeing doing these days, by the way?
Yeah, right.
They hired Nikki Haley and then all of their airplanes started falling apart? Is that what you're telling me?
Something like that. Absolutely. No, I mean, she's like a walking stereotype of the sort of revolving door of the Washington establishment and corporate lobbying.
Do you?
It's actually sad to see.
Yeah, it really is. But in a sense, it's it's helpful. It's a useful case study in the way a lot of people are in Washington, actually, but few are quite as brazen as Nikki Haley.
Yeah, exactly. It's clarifying, especially now that it actually is a two-person race, and so you can see the contrast between Nikki Haley and somebody like Trump, who, for being a former president and really running as an incumbent and the head of the Republican Party, is in every way still an outsider to the establishment in D.C., which is why they hate him so much, and which is why they're backing Nikki Haley and will do whatever they can, even throw him in prison, to prevent him from getting back into the White House.
John Daniel Davidson, like I said at the outset, Ron DeSantis did drop out over the weekend of the race ahead of these votes today in New Hampshire. My impression upon seeing him drop out on Sunday, of all days, was that he had decided, you know what, I want to make sure that whatever the Haley thing is gets absolutely strangled in the cradle, that it is suffocated in New Hampshire. Is that right? Do you think that that's part of the reason DeSantis dropped out?
I think that's part of it, certainly. The fact that they finished more or less neck and neck in Iowa, I think was not encouraging for him. It's not what his campaign was hoping for. I also think he was thinking of his own political future and sort of seeing the writing on the wall that the party really does belong to Trump and Trump's movement. And if he wants a future in the party, in national politics, then he needs to be part of that movement, not standing in opposition to it. It was a savvy move to get out what he did. I'm sort of discouraged to see the very next day he decided to take a shot at Trump for some reason. I don't know who's advising him to do that, but at least he was able to get out at the right time.
I think there are some raw feelings, but man, he's a great governor, and it bodes very well for the future of the party. If guys like that rise to power. So thank you very much. John Daniel Davidson, I really appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Hey, thanks for having me.
That's John Daniel Davidson. I do want to bring you some more audio from New Hampshire as the polls are open and voters are showing up today in the first in the nation primary. Nikki Haley was asked this week, this was yesterday, if by an attendee, if she would marry him. If she would marry him. Now, my understanding is Nikki Haley is married already, they say. But Nikki Haley answered his question with another question. Will you vote for me? Listen to how this went down.
But you know what? We've got a lot on the line here. We really do. And you look at what's happening in this election. Yes. Are you going to vote for me?
Okay, so it might be a little hard to hear. She goes, "Are you going to vote for me?" And he begrudgingly kind of says, "I'm voting for Trump." He says, and the audience starts booing him.
Get out of here.
Get out of here. Get him out, someone yells. Not allowed to be in here. So there's that. Meanwhile, Trump's campaign sounded very different. Vivek Ramaswamy was there with Trump last night. I think Trump's figured out that Vivek's a massive hit, so he keeps bringing him out.
If you want to seal the border, vote Trump. If you want to restore law and order in this country, vote Trump. If you want to defeat the deep state, vote Trump. If you want to fight inflation, vote Trump. If you want to revive national pride in this country, vote Trump. If you want to revive our national identity in this country, vote Trump. If you want to make America great again, vote Trump. That's how we're going to win this in a landslide in November, like Reagan delivered in 1980.
All right, so Donald Trump all pumped about that. The audience pumped about that. Trump last night, remember we were speculating, like, hey, why did Trump come out against the centralized bank digital currency? Remember the CBDC? Which we've got plenty of globalists and American politicians who'd like to force us into, which is a digital currency rather than your paper. And here is Trump last night saying it was Vivek who warned him about this, and now he's against it.
And this I do for Vivek, because he's very big into it. I happen to agree with him, but he said, could you mention this? I will never. She said, I love Vivek. I love him too now. I didn't love him when he was running, but I like him now. It's amazing the way you can like somebody when you win, right? But Vivek is great. He's really great. But he wanted this, and I'll give him full credit for it. It's very important, actually. I will never allow the creation of a central bank digital currency.
That's an applause line. I'm for it. Thank you for taking that up. A good one. Tim Scott, also of South Carolina, as the primary is going to barrel along to South Carolina, the senator there has endorsed Donald Trump and, in fact, appeared in New Hampshire with him last night.
We have another one. Everybody knows him. And today was a big story, the biggest story out there. He's engaged to be married. We never thought this was going to happen. What's going on?
We never thought.
A very, very fine person, a man that we work so closely, and I work so closely with. He was in the Senate. He's been there now a long time.
58 years old.
One of the most respected people in all of Washington, Senator Tim Scott.
Yeah, he is engaged to be married. The Washington Post. South Carolina Senator Tim Scott, a possible VP pick, is engaged to be married. His girlfriend, Mindy Noche. She said yes on Saturday evening at the beach in Kiowa Island. Is that how you pronounce it? I'm not sure if you do. South Carolina. But there they are in South Carolina. Good for Tim Scott. Tim Scott last night sounding like this.
All right. If you want 4 more years of Donald Trump, let me hear you scream.
Little Howard Dean moment.
If you want the race to be over tomorrow, let me hear you scream.
All right, so we'll see. We'll see. There's Tim Scott last night supporting, as Donald Trump would say, your favorite president last night in New Hampshire. And the results are coming in. And these exit polls that Fox is releasing today are fascinating because nobody likes Biden. That's the message of all of this. Everyone thinks the economy's crappy. And even the Democrats are saying that should Biden become the nominee, at least 10% of them will not be supporting him in November. Does that bode well for Trump? Well, if we have an honest election, yes. Otherwise, all right, Phil is on the phone. Phil calls in, and here he is, line 1. Hello, Phil. You're on the Vince Colonnese Show.
Hey, Vince, look, I just want to know why Nikki Haley, has anybody asked Nikki Haley why she doesn't like her first name? Because I love that first name. Nimrata is a badass first name. I mean, she sounds like an Indian superhero, you know? She could have a Snake Plissken moment and say, they call me Nimrata. You know?
Yeah, it's kind of cool if you say it the right way. Yeah. It is a weird thing. It's like... I like they get really upset when you point out that her real name is Nimrata, which it is. It turns out, at least according to the internet, that's her first name, and her middle name is Nikki. I guess I don't know. I don't think it's just a nickname. I think it may actually be her official middle name, but she goes by Nikki. But everyone gets very upset about Nimrata. I'm like, man, there's a lot more things to get upset about than people calling you your first name.
Absolutely, I love that name. My name is Phil, which is something you throw in a hole. So, you know, I mean, Nimrata sounds great to me.
Yeah. Thank you. You know, and others point to the fact, like, hey, what's the deal? Why not just use your first name? It's kind of phony to use your middle name to substitute, and maybe that's an explainer. Thanks, Phil. Phil likes Nimrata, and he'd like that to be. Maybe Phil would vote for Nimrata if she would use that in her campaign material. That's how enamored he is by her name. Holy cow. Let's see. I do have some other audio for you here. The World Economic Forum, meanwhile, as we're debating American politics, they'd like to take control of your life. A Swiss banker and World Economic Forum leader called Hubert Keller this week is advocating that you stop drinking coffee entirely to save the planet.
We'll be having our coffee before the session, and you raised the coffee example. I'd love just to give you the chance to expand on that.
Basically, the coffee that we all drink...
Basically, you do not drink coffee at all.
Emits between 15 and 20 tons of CO2 per ton of coffee.
How many tons of carbon does this guy emit?
So we should all know that this is every time we drink coffee, we are basically putting CO2 into the atmosphere. The other, and one of the reasons is because most of the coffee plantations...
They really want us to suffer, don't they? Coffee is a gift from God. Coffee is a gift. It's a productivity gift. It is fantastic. It's a delicious gift of productivity. And they're looking to rob you of that. No more coffee for you. I was looking it up earlier just to verify. I went down a rabbit hole this morning after I heard that clip. I was like, that guy's crazy. And then I discovered, do you know what else they're against? wood burning. You're not supposed to burn wood either. So you can't burn coal. You can't burn natural gas. Wood produces too much carbon. And remember, they were saying it's the modern world that's destroying the planet. Well, as long as humans have figured out how to rub sticks together, we've been burning wood, and now we're not allowed to do that anymore? I'm starting to think they don't really care about us. Hey, you know who cares about you? The great one, Mark Levin, and he's up next right here on the legendary WMAL.